Unit 2, Topic 10. Finding the derivatives of tangent, cotangent, secant, and cosecant functions. Recall earlier in the unit that we learned that the derivative of sine x is cosine x. If you don't have that memorized, you need to memorize that. The proofs were done before. The derivative of cosine of x is negative sine x. We're going to add more trig derivatives to memorize. We have the derivative of tangent x is secant squared x. The derivative of cotangent x is negative cosecant squared x. The derivative of secant x is secant x tangent x. And the derivative of cosecant x is negative cosecant cotangent. So put those on a note card and start memorizing them. So I'm going to do a proof of one of them. We're just going to do the derivative of tangent. This is dy dx. This is derivative notation. Instead of doing tangent, I'm going to change the form to sine of x divided by cosine of x, which we know is tangent. And I'm going to use the quotient rule that you should have memorized. So it's the bottom times the derivative of the top minus the top times the derivative of the bottom. And the derivative of the bottom is negative sine. So that makes that a plus sine x. All over, don't forget the denominator squared. And that's how you write cosine of x squared. So in the numerator, you can see we have cosine squared x plus sine squared x. All divided by cosine squared x. Don't do bad math and cancel out those terms. You can't do that. But from trig, you should remember your Pythagorean identity, that cosine squared plus sine squared is equal to 1. So that's 1 over cosine squared of x, and 1 over cosine squared is secant squared of x. So we've just proved that the derivative of tangent x is secant squared x, using the other properties for derivatives that we have learned. Okay, so you get to memorize these. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different trig derivatives that you need to know. Okay, so let's practice. The derivative of y is y prime, or in terms of x, it's dy over dx. The derivative of y with respect to x, or y prime. So dy dx equals the derivative of x, 1. Try these along with me. The derivative of tan x, that's a new one. Derivative of tan x, secant squared x, and you should recognize 1 minus secant squared x. Which trig identity is that? 1 minus secant squared x equals tangent squared x. So these are multiple choice questions normally on the AP exam, so you'll have to make your answer look like one of theirs. Okay, let's go ahead and try B. The derivative of y with respect to x, dy dx, or y prime. Okay. What do you think we should use on this one? You should recognize that as a product. That is x times the secant of x. So we're going to use the product rule. The first factor times the derivative of secant x. Again, that's a new one. So if we look up here, the derivative of secant x is secant tangent. So memorize that. Secant x, do not leave off your angles. You must have an x or a theta, depending on whichever variable they start with. secant x times tangent x. That's the first times the derivative of the second, plus the second times the derivative of the first, which is just 1. So we can simplify that. Again, check the multiple choice answers to see how far you can simplify it. I'm just going to pull out a secant x and leave it as x tan x plus 1. If that wasn't one of the multiple choices, you would have to continue to simplify until you get one of their choices. Okay, part C, you're going to take the derivative of y with respect to x, cosecant x, that's one of our new ones, negative cosecant x, cotangent x, and the derivative of cotangent x, which is negative cosecant squared. Okay, so you're going to use the derivative, and then you're going to use your algebra skills and your trig identities to prove that you can get 1 divided by 1 plus cosine x. And I'm going to leave you to do that on your own.